for the Arts Festival Summit 2022 in Yerevan, Armenia. Hosted by the Yerevan Perspective International Music Festival. More info on EFA's website.
So we're going to have the next keynote. This speaker is unfortunately is not able to be with us in this place and in this time. So she's pre-recorded her contribution, but I think it will be an interesting provocation for the next conversation that we have together. So even though she's not here, either virtually or physically, Danica Purg is the president of the IEDC Blitz School of Management in Slovenia, and she's the president of CMAN, the International Association for Management Development in Dynamic Societies, and the president of the Alliance of Management Development Associations in Rising Economies to accelerate the growth of relevant and excellent management education in the global markets that need it most. She's authored and co-authored several books and articles on leadership issues, and her research focuses on looking for inspirations for managers from art and other professions. And she's the chair for creativity and innovation at IEDC, which is a school that she founded in 1986 and which is designed as an art gallery and a place where leaders come to learn and reflect. So I think an interesting perspective to bring today on the relationship between management and culture, and a provocation for the next conversation that we have together. So we'll watch Danica's presentation for about 12 minutes online, and then we'll continue our conversations. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Danica, and I am a president of Blitz School of Management in Slovenia. You can see on the picture this beautiful lake of Bled, and there in the middle, under the castle, is our school. Our school is created like an art gallery, and because we want to inspire people, and not only participants, but also employees, everybody who is walking here around. And we have a slogan that we are creative environment for creative leadership. So we are similar to you. I can tell you, we are also operating as a continuous event, as a ship in the ocean of new information and knowledge. And we are like your organization, like your organizations, like festivals, looking for the latest and the best. And so we have about 10 faculty who are fully employed, but then we have 60 who are coming from all over the world, and some of them are artists, like Haris Pašović, whom you certainly know. He is already for quite some years professor of art and leadership in our school. In IEDC, we develop art and leadership using art to make managers and leaders, this is the main idea, to make them to hear better, because managers have to listen very well to other people, to other managers, and to the environment. They have to be good observers, so they can learn how to be better observers from the visual arts. And they have also to be better communicators, and that we teach them through choirs. They have to lead the choirs, we ask them to direct them, etc. So all this is, all this is some learning, I would say, from art metaphor. And there are many different arts from which managers can learn. I made a nice movie some years ago with a conductor, Letonia, Slovenian conductor, whom some of you for sure know. And he was impressed by himself to see on my questions how much business people and managers can learn from art. But he was also impressed and surprised how much is the opposite the case. So my question is, if we show, we show to participants some pieces of art, we are letting them reflect what can they learn from the decisions which can be made on ugly or on beautiful way. And I'm asking myself and I'm asking you, can you make a beauty at your festival if you manage organization on an ugly way? If we look to the changes in Europe, in business, and how these changes are impacting the business, then we can also ask ourselves, how are the demographic, for instance, demographic changes influencing art and your festivals? And I think that you don't see such changes in organizations of your festivals. That this demography doesn't impact, in fact, that you are seeing at the festival mostly the old, if I may say, old category of people. You are seeing more elites. You don't see immigrants, poor people, old people, youngest people, etc. That is something to think about. Then, you know, the aesthetical need is fulfilled for sure. I'm also the lover of festivals, so I'm very often, especially music, I like very much in Ljubljana. And I have to say, entertainment, aesthetical view, all this is fulfilled, but there is no place for reflection, for waking up call. There is no impact of provocation, shock, because only through that people are learning, are reflecting. So we would like to have more festivals that are also having educational nature and that they are letting you reflect and think, you know, that you go home and you are really enriched and feeling fine, you know, from the beauty you were seeing and feeling and listening at the festival, at the concert or whatever it was on the agenda, on the program, but it has to give you still something else. It has to provide you still something else. At least I believe that. So I think that business leaders can learn a lot from art, what I'm all the time telling you. But question is, what can art learn from business? And I think that one of the very important things is innovation. And we all know that innovations come from small focused entities and not from big organizations. I'm even thinking in our school to make a special laboratory where we would invite small, you know, startups, companies, and leaders of them who would come and work with our facilitation, of course, with bigger companies, with old companies, to make them more innovative. Secondly, small festivals are often more interesting, more innovative, bringing more surprising arts and they are more podium for talents. And I believe that success, you know, and we talk about garage companies to promote innovations. You remember these stories that many innovations came up in the garages, in the kitchens of some innovators, some managers, some leaders, etc. So the same, I think, for the festivals. The very important thing for festivals is cooperation. Companies build an ecosystem of horizontal, not on hierarchical basis. And the essential basis of such an organization is trust. Very important is also networking. You have increasingly international networking. I'm sure you get all your people, artists from all over the world, if you are a good networker. So there is not a doubt. There is no doubt about that. And very important is if you are ready, firstly to give and then to get. And the question is always, you know, if you want to get, you must offer by yourself first. And you have to offer something excellent. And you have to offer something which will really make other client or other guest or somebody who is, you know, your partner very much intrigued and interested in. So networking, what do I have to offer? And the third thing is performance of a team. We are This teamwork includes all people in the business change. And this is also a reason why organizations where a small number of people cooperate very closely, why such organization is more successful than the big one. We have to make organization a small one by creating subunits in which everybody is responsible for that unit particularly, but also for the big picture. So this is again, you know, being responsible for all tasks and for the small one. This means, you know, there was a famous company that in Sweden that the manager made it. He was like, his function was for some years walking around the world and making this company smaller and small units and talking with the leaders. That's why we need also in management schools more leaders, because organizations are getting smaller and each small unit has its own leader. The same it goes for your organizations. And so if we look today again, what can we learn from business? We can say that managing becomes increasingly communication, that we saw very much after the COVID. Communication, coordination, networking, facilitation, much more than learning in management school, facilitation and problem solving. And I think you have a lot of this too. We know from business that, and from team building, I'm teaching team building too, that it's not clever to manage the stars. It's very difficult because these are big individuals. Managing or leading means to create conditions that people can perform optimally. That it is. And let them as they are, but manage the preconditions, conditions. And I have to say that every organization can be successful if it is based on a proper corporate culture, which means that respect, trust, and that has to be shown in every behavior, from smaller to the top of the organization. You have to respect each other. And a sustainable development is certainly one of the very important factors of success. You have to think a little bit about sustainability. You know, how we are driving 200 people from the concert around the world. How we bring people by planes from very far for 30, 40 people in management school. That I'm often thinking too. Although I know that seeing somebody in person and listening to somebody in person is something else than online. But we have to have nevertheless in the mind also this factor, especially in the actual situation when the world becomes in danger because of the climate change. I hope and I see that relation between art and business and art will develop in the future positively, and that it is the relationship which will be based on mindset. I mean, I see it and I hope for it, that this relationship will be based on mindset, not only on economic ground. I imagine that you expected me to talk more about just that, what I said, about economic grounds, about real business. But I try to show you that in our school, and that it's possible in general, to have more, that the art can have more educational role. And I think that in the future, the festival should also keep this factor in mind, have more connection with university, have more relationship with students and with professors and with ministers of education, so not only for culture, so that this would leave some very important impact on the future leaders from whom it depends where our world goes. Thank you very, very much, and I wish you a wonderful conference. Bye.
just to check in, is there anything interesting that's come up in these conversations that you'd like to share with us? Or anything frustrating, anything ugly, or anything beautiful? Just a couple of thoughts here. Excellent, Davinia.
Okay, so we were told to be provocative by Eric before. I'm going to blame you. And we are not in agreement with what is beautiful and ugly. We're not very keen on those words, actually. It's about something else. It's about more about provocation and reflection, which is, again, there. So that goes back to critical thinking, exactly. And the questions being framed as well, we have our own provocation about that. We feel it's a bit, the festivals and the business, whereas we think a festival is a business too. And we're very strong about that. So in a way, what we are referring to here as business is a bit old-fashioned. And we look to the future and we see the festival as a business itself. And in actual fact, even though businesses can be important part of our stakeholders, definitely, but it's also in competition with the festival for funding, for anything, And we're also seeing that there's what we think the festivals can contribute to, which is better than traditional for-profit businesses, is that we work much more on cooperation rather than the look to profit, to financial profit. And growth, yes. And we also spoke about the importance of corporate social responsibility, which is, and gave an example of a festival in Malta, in fact, that a bank has just opened up the past 3 years and has opened up a festival with a call for artistic director. So there can be a good relation as well between it. But we don't want to make that divide between best festival and business, because in a way we're one and the same. We're just in different sectors. I don't know if anyone would like to.
Great, thank you. Yerevan.
Maybe to share something regarding, we are a lot of musical people here. The comparison to a music piece and business and festival running. When you have a music piece, normally in the traditional way, there's a notation at the beginning, a key. What is the tonality of the piece? And often we run our cultural institutions and the tonality of this is often business-oriented. And the question here is if that always should be the case, or that we actually should try to get rid of now and then the pre-signs of this tonality and ask ourselves, what is the real currency of art and culture beyond the accountability of what businesses are doing, which they are doing great, but our currency is not the same kind of ticket sales and numbers, but actually something which only shows itself in an undefined way, in an undefined future. And if we don't have space for that in our music piece, in the presets, we will maybe slowly get squeezed from more keys before our music piece, and by this, so there's a sudden dying out of it. I'm exaggerating a bit.
So yeah, one person's beautiful improvised music is another person's ugly music, in a way, is something that you're saying, and maybe we can lean into the improvisation and not the classically notated way of doing things. One more.
Okay, they want me to speak something. Okay, Teresa from the Czech Republic. I was just sharing our latest discussion in our country because there are recently more and more quite rich Czech people, like entrepreneurs, and they earned money from different ways. And now they are sometimes thinking to invest into festivals and maybe to build new concert halls and so on. and we called it something like karma washing. And there was a big discussion in our country, or small discussion maybe with my colleagues, and our conclusion was, okay, let them do their karma washing because the public sector will not do it. The public sector is more and more slow, poor, and complicated to decide and to build something, and they just can very easily build something and invest somewhere, and so let them do this karma washing. Nobody else will do it.
Great, thank you. So we're coming to our final speaker, who is joining us online, but she is joining us live online. And this is Dominica Lasota, who's a climate justice activist from Poland, who has been involved in organizing the Fridays for Future movement and is a member of the consultative council that was set up in 2020 in response to this. Dominica, welcome. It's great that you're with us.
We are still putting you on the screen here.
Okay.
Bear with us. Dominica, here in the hall, we are sitting around small tables of 6 to 7 people. There is one table that didn't follow the rules. They are sitting with 10 people around one circle. But they are, of course, adult people, and they choose to speak with a bigger group. If you still want to split, guys, you are free to do so. But you can also stick together, obviously. Tom.
Dominica, welcome. It would be great to hear your thoughts, your provocation, and then when we're finished, I'll have a short conversation with you, and then we will move into discussion among the small groups in the room. So welcome, and thanks for being with us.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Dominica Lasota. I'm a 20-year-old climate justice activist from Poland, and I regret not being able to join you in person today in Yerevan. However, the work here and the movement, the community that I am part of here very desperately needs my support at the moment, and so that wasn't just possible for me to join you in Armenia. But I'm still very honored and privileged to be able to speak to you because I feel like we live in extremely challenging times at the moment, extremely tragic times, and times that are calling for a drop to business as usual and really bold action. And so I'm happy and I hope that we can connect to that urgency today. But I wanted to first start off with a little backstory, because I wore my classic T-shirt today since 24th of February, together with my friends from Ukraine and Poland and across Eastern Europe. We have been fighting in response to the fossil-fueled war that is happening in Ukraine at the moment. And since that very cold Thursday morning back then, when my friend called me saying, Dominica, I'm running down to the basement now, I'll call you later. I was shaken so much to the core that it felt like my world that was built and that sense of safety that was built for all of us since years has crushed. And what unfolded was something that all of us thought was unimaginable, a full-scale invasion. What appeared in front of me is a reality of crises in which none of us is at safety and everybody is at risk. And so since then, almost every single day, we have been fighting for the full embargo on Russian fossil fuels, because we know that it is that fossil fuel dependency that Europe still has that is the biggest sponsor of the war machine in Ukraine, and that causes for our friends to have to leave their homes and seek safety. But I wanted to first and kind of to begin with say and maybe have a little appeal to you that I do not want to be an inspiration to you today. Because many people tell us and tell young activists that we're so inspirational, that we give them hope, that we're being applauded, we're receiving smiles, and we're receiving words of congrats for our revolutionary thoughts. But to me, it has unfortunately left me feeling very lonely in this world, and has left me and my friends feeling that the weight of the world is really put onto our shoulders. And so what I want to appeal to you today, what I want to appeal to you today is for you to not treat me as an inspirational, hopeful young person speaking to you, but more for me to shake you a little bit at least, and for you to join me. Because the story of now is, as I said, is pretty tragic, and it is pretty concerning to say the least. Because the story of now is a story of crisis. And I feel like I do not remember a time in which we have been forced from so many different directions, we have been forced with tragedy, of destruction, and such risk as of now. We live in times of unprecedented climate crisis and of climate destruction, which is already taking the lives of millions and of millions of people across the world. Just recently, new pictures, new photos, and stories from Pakistan, which has experienced the biggest drought and the biggest flood in its history, potentially displacing 30 million of people. Over summer, we have seen the unprecedented fires raging even across Europe now, and heat waves that are already taking the lives and the health of millions of people across our continent and around the world. Well, at the same time, we're seeing that climate crisis on one side, but on the other, we have the cost of living crisis and the energy crisis. And we are seeing how our families, how my family and families of my friends and people across my country and beyond are struggling to make ends meet because the politicians are complicit to the fossil fuel industry and put profit above the people and allow for businesses, for corporations, and for the fossil fuel companies to reap record profits, while at the same time putting so many people at risk and at an economic and life threat. And on the third side, to share and to complete that picture of the crisis reality, we have obviously the war that is happening just next to us. A war that, again, a few months back wouldn't be something unimaginable, but now is our reality, our new normal, which obviously has nothing to do with normal. And that war reality really showed full on the scale of violence, the scale of brutality that politicians who prioritize profit over people can lead towards. We're now talking about, I don't even know how many billions of euros that have been still flowing to the Russian pocket, to the Russian budget, fueling the war machine. But most importantly, we're seeing how the system that is at the root of our societies is really destructive, and how that dependency on fossil fuels, on fuels that are from like a previous era, and that complicity, that support of politicians who also come from what seems like an old era, are posing a really live threat to all of us. Because if anybody in the room thinks that those crises do not hit them yet, and so they can be calm, I need to burst that bubble. Because if our societies are governed by people who do not treat our lives seriously, and who on a daily basis make decisions that put people under their own benefits, no one is safe. And so that is the story of now. That is the story that for us is the reality. That is the normal. And so you may think and you may ask, how do we counter that? And obviously I do not have full answers, but given the fight that me and my friends have been leading for the past months and for the past years, I know about two things. And the very important thing to first to begin with is to listen. Is to first listen to those who are most affected on the front lines of those crises. Because when you listen to Ugandan people, for instance, which are being pushed out of their houses, out of their villages, because a French company is coming into their cities and towns to build another pipeline so that a company in France can get richer, you have a true sense of what crisis we are talking about. Because when you open yourself up to the stories of people, for instance, from Philippines, who have been suffering from hurricanes, from climate destructions since decades, you realize that we're not talking about any future problem. We're not talking about some future progress that we want to build. We're talking about decades of destruction that we need to desperately stop at the moment. And finally, when you listen to people, for instance, from Ukraine, from Syria, or from Armenia, who are at the moment also suffering from a fossil-fueled aggression, you realize that that root, that fundament of our society is wrong. And that is something that we need to finally change urgently, because we no longer have time. So listen, that's the first thing. And as a community of people who are so close to culture and so close to ideas and exchanging ideas and spreading innovative ideas out there, the second part to that answer to the crisis reality is building the story, the new story of now. And that story is a story of resistance to me. It can be encapsulated in this very short, sign, stop fueling the war. For me, it's not just about stop fueling the war in Ukraine, it's stop fueling the war of profit against people. And the story that I am building with my friends and the story that is built by many people on the front lines of the crisis is a story of resisting towards this toxic power that wants to take lives away from people. But we need you on board. If you think that there is any way that we can stick to business as usual anymore, I need to say that's no longer the case. When there is a war happening against all of the people, we all have to join that fight. We all have to join that fight, because otherwise we're complicit to what's happening. We're supporting the story of now, the story of the crisis reality. And I think when I think about festivals, I think there couldn't have been a better opportunity for people to gather and weave the elements of that different story, the story of resistance and the story of protecting the worlds that we are losing, so desperately losing right now. There's no more time for just standing there, listening, applauding to inspirational people. I'm not special in any way. And I think, we have to abandon this kind of sense that, there are some icons or there are some leaders out there that can provide us with safety and they can save our world. We all can save multiple worlds out there that are currently being erased by the system that we're living in. And so if any of you would like to take something meaningful from this, is, I think, join us in building the new story for now, because otherwise we might be seeing more tragedies unfolding, more crises piling up, more people, more life, more ecosystems, more communities, and more cultures disappearing in front of our eyes. And so, we will not save the whole world, but there are so many worlds that can still be saved and treasured, and they still thrive. And so my call for you is to join me in creating that new story, because otherwise we will just stick to the crisis reality. And I don't think it leads us into any good direction so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominica. I don't know if you could hear the applause in the room for your contribution, but it's really appreciated here. I wondered, do you have any examples that you've come across in your work of festivals or cultural organizations or artists who are doing the kinds of things that you would like to see more of and that we need to be doing more of?
I think the very kind of basic idea of actions that we have seen that are kind of growing and becoming more popular and become kind of a new normal is to include and to really like platform and place activists and local community fighters and social justice fighters in the festival scene. I've seen it in France, I've seen it in Germany, and I hope that we can bring it also more home to Eastern Europe, to Poland, for instance. You know, it can be, it can start from a very basic thing as hosting a panel, but also I think what has been extremely so far impactful in building the resistance and in mobilizing more and more people that we so much need in the movement is when the activists are platformed, you know, on the big stages, when, you know, we have that story that is so needed and that is so necessary to be heard as loud and as wide as possible, to be platformed where the biggest power is. And I feel like, you know, when I think of festivals at the moment, I truly believe that they must perform a better and more disruptive role in the society, and they shouldn't be complicit to the crisis, because I feel like by then, you know, we may wake up in a few years and realize that there is very little worlds and very little cultures that are still there to feature in those festivals. So I think being more disruptive, bringing activists on board, opening up to the local communities, featuring also the local struggles, and not really, and for festivals to not be kind of detached from what's going on locally. I think this is the way for those festivals to truly be a tool to also save those micro worlds that are out there.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think there's also something about presenting these ideas which are challenging and which, you know, unfortunately might be new to some of the festival audiences, but in a context which is built around joy and it's built around celebration and it's built around togetherness.
I think, you know, I mean, I definitely agree. I think me as a person, I felt kind of, I grew very tired of hope, because, you know, I grew tired of having the kind of ultimate universal belief that things are going to be different, because then, you know, we see more political decisions, more tragedies happening, and it feels like, you know, hope will not save us. What will save us is action, but action can be joyful. And then from the movement perspective, you know, whenever we do protests or mobilizations, whenever we gather people, whenever we build, you know, the symbols of the movement, for instance, the anti-war climate movement of that we are building now, there's many symbols of joy, and there's many times and opportunities to celebrate. And we often dance, we often play music, we often feature the local symbols. For instance, like one of the core features of the movement at the moment for now is the sunflower, is the symbol of the Ukrainian resistance. But that joy is still kind of part and a core element and a tool for us to act, to build the action and to build disruptive action and disruptive movements, because only through that disruption and through that bold action that's needed, we are able to stop the bad stuff, the bad guys, from making more and more destructive decisions, and at the same time, you know, through that, protect more life and protect our friends and protect other people and communities. And I think, you know, I wish there would be more, you know, music artists, for instance, involved in the resistance. You know, back in the days, and it seemed like, you know, I grew up hearing all of those stories in Poland, for instance, from where the solidarity movement was growing in our country in the face of the communist regime that we've had. And there was many artists involved. There was so many poems written. There was so many underground, obviously very niche, very secret initiatives that were helping, that were the platform and the spaces of where this different system was built, this different ways of living and functioning was built, this different political thought. But now I feel like we are only, since a very since few years, I guess, we are waking up to the scale of the crisis we are actually in. But we need more people to wake others up, and I feel like, you know, you are extremely needed in that process. You as festival makers, but also as artists, and bringing more artists on board and not being scared of disruptive things, because to me, you know, what is scary is when we don't do stuff and when we allow those decisions still to be made. And so the disruption, I think like we need to shift what is radical to us. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, very recent this year said that very often climate activists are portrayed as radicals, as the ones that are disruptive and the bad ones. But to him, to the Secretary General of the UN, the true radicals are the guys and the ones sitting in decision-making rooms, making decisions that go against the people, the fossil fuel industry, and the politicians who are friends with that industry or friends with dictators and autocratic politicians around the world. And so I think, shifting the way we think about what's radical, what's disruptive, is really something that especially a community like you should definitely be at the front line of.
Thank you so much, Dominica. And we're here 70 years on from the founding of this organization, and 75 years on from the foundation of the European festivals that came out of the context of a war in Europe. And as we look ahead to what we do for the next 70 years, there's another war in Europe. And I think your words inspiring us to more action and more joy and more courage, and maybe in those things we can find again the possibility of hope. So thank you for taking this time to be with us, and all the best with everything that you're doing. And now we're going to hand the conversation over to the group here in the room. So let's give a round of applause to say goodbye to Dominica.
Thank you so much. And good luck to all of your discussions and to action. I hope to see you somewhere sometime.
Thanks so much. And Catherine, we'll pose the first question for the group in the room. Thanks so much. Congratulations on your contribution to today. It's been really nourishing just to be in the room and feel the energy of the conversations that have been unfolding all day. So thank you for all of your contributions. We have a few minutes before we finish to hear some final thoughts from the circles. So if there's anything that has come up in your conversations just now in response to these questions and Dominica's presentation, or anything else that you'd like to share with us, or that you're going to take with you into the evening or the next day or the rest of your life. If there's any beauty or ugliness or joy or activism that you need to do right now. A couple of final thoughts for these last few moments.
We can maybe do a pulse.
A pause?
Who wants the activist and who wants the joy in festivals?
Yeah. Oh no,
the joy and the activist.
No surveying. It's not. That's reductive. Just some final thoughts. Yes, Paul.
Very short. Yesterday we had the General Assembly and I thought it was a lot of bureaucracy. And this morning I was a little bit thinking what I'm doing here. And I must say thank you for being here, because today it was a lot of energy. And I will keep home this discussion of today. So we have our bureaucracy from yesterday, who is a democratic model we need. But having these conversations are very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Over here, Davinia.
Hi, Tom. I just thought all of the speakers just really contributed to the 15 points of the menu for action. I think they're really important for our festivals to look at, to read, to consider. That will really lead to challenges, which are important, and joy, which is also important. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Anyone down the back? Eric? They're all saying you have something to say.
No, the only thing in our conversation, responding to the last question, basically, and what I said is, we didn't wait for the existing festivals to organize Woodstock, And that is what changed a generation and the world. So, in fact, I think Youth for Climate should organize its own festival, organizing a weekend in Kiev against the destruction and against the war, and mobilizing 150,000 young people there and spreading it. And then what this kind of organization should do is giving them the means and the infrastructure to do that. Something EFA could do that, but I think we need one-shots now, because activism is joyful. One of the depressing things today in the world is that people, and I'm the oldest person in the room probably, and I think that your generations thought that the only thing that could be aspired is amending the existing system, doing a bit better. And I think the young people today, and I agree fully with them, say we have to change the system. We have to change the narrative. We have to start all over again. We are living in a destructive situation. And if you really want to listen to them, we have to restart a certain number of things that will not come out of doing a bit better as we already did maybe for 75 years or for 70 years. That's what I said here. So what we need is a new Woodstock, which is a founding kind of festival. And yes, what also was answered, that generation didn't succeed. We fooled up the world also in the same time. But if you want to listen to them, we have to restart a new form and not just amend what is existing.
Thank you so much, Eric. Anyone else? Yes, over here.
I don't have much to say. I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude to organizers of this event, and especially to the speakers. They were very motivational. We heard a lot of very wise thoughts. And I wanted to say a special thanks to Dominica for mentioning also Armenia and the crisis we're having right now, and we're suffering, yes, from the Azerbaijani attacks right now. Also, I want to thank my two groups, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share experience, to share thoughts. So this was a very great session today, and have a nice evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've been thinking a little bit today about Jean-Luc Godard, the artist and writer and filmmaker and theorist and critic who died today, and I just with what Eric is saying, and I think with some of the things we've been hearing all day, I'm reminded of a quote where Godard said, "It's not where you take things from, it's where you take things to." And in a way, at this moment, this 70 years on moment, with all of the things that are going on in the world, with all of the things we've heard about from our speakers, with everything that we've discussed in our groups, we are somewhere, we are in a place and in a time, but it is now not about where we're going from, but where we're going to. So maybe we think about this provocation from Godard, of the same generation as Woodstock, who made something new and who inspires us not to repeat that, but to try and make another something new to go on with. Thanks so much, everyone, for all of your generosity and your time and your space and your ideas and your voices and your minds today. And the conversation, of course, can continue and will continue this evening and tomorrow and for the next 70 years. But for now, I'll hand back over to Catherine. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Tom, for bringing in poetry, as always, and accuracy into the sessions and your stories that you share with us. It's wonderful to have you here with us and facilitating today.